Redditors who frequent AITA, what's the biggest a-hole post you remember? The guy who inherited a business from his dad and then fired an employee who'd been there since he was in diapers because her sister called her in sick when she was catatonic with grief 3 days after her husband passed away. Employees must call in person. He's tough but fair. I just don't think I'm the bad guy here for that, especially after how disrespectful they both have been to me for no reason, even though a couple of my employees have definitely been icy to me since yesterday, and I'm sure it's because of all this BS. So here's the story. So I, 26 male, own a small business with about 30 employees total. My dad started the business in his 20s and passed it on to me when he passed away 6 years ago, so I've been running things ever since. I like to think I'm tough but fair to my employees, and I'll help you out if you need it, but don't mess with me or take advantage of my kindness. Anyway, this employee, Julie, fake name in question, was with the company for 11 years and used to work swing shifts, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday through Thursday. This past Sunday, she didn't show up. I called and texted her many times, but no answer, so I gave up. I was really annoyed because I got stuck working that night, as I keep a bare crew every shift because it's a lot cheaper that way, so there was no one to cover. So the next day I came in around 10 a.m. because I worked late, and apparently I had a missed call from Julie's sister. I didn't call her back because I was just annoyed at the situation and figured if it was an emergency, she'd call back. She did call back around 11:30, and well, apparently Julie's husband was in a bad car accident very early Sunday morning and he passed away. She said Julie would not be in for the rest of the week, possibly longer, as she's supposedly catatonic, her words. To be honest, I felt bad, but at the same time, he apparently passed away Saturday night, Sunday morning. That gave her at least 12 hours to send me some type of heads up about her not showing up. Either way, I decided to be nice and excuse her for the no call she was going to do that day, Monday, but I told the sister that if she did another no call and no show the next day, Tuesday, she would be fired. She was kind of silent for a second and then said, "She's not doing a no call. I'm calling right now." Then I said that the only person who can call out for Julie is Julie, and if she doesn't bother to contact me, then it will be a NCNS. Julie's sister got pretty hysterical and said how I'm apparently heartless and her husband just passed away and she can't even get out of bed and had to be bathed by her sister, TMI, and on and on. When I just repeated myself, she snapped, "She won't frickin' be in," and hung up on me. Well, Julie didn't show up yesterday, so she has officially been terminated. Like, I feel bad, but I'm sorry. My job is to run my business, and this was actively preventing me from doing so. My number one priority is my company, as it should be, and I just don't think I'm the bad guy here for that, especially after how disrespectful they both have been to me for no reason. Even though a couple of my employees have definitely been icy to me since yesterday, and I'm sure it's because of all this BS. AITA here? Her husband passed away, and he expected this poor woman should immediately think about how that will affect him. Not only that, but she was with the company for 11 years and he dropped her over just 3 days. Your employees are icy because they now realize how perilous their jobs are if something like this happens to them. Story 2. The guy who moved into his younger girlfriend's apartment and threw away her fancy drinking jars that she loved from their shelf because they bothered him and he wanted her to just drink from normal cups? I think about this entitled jerk a lot. I, 42 male, moved in with my lovely girlfriend, 28F, a few months ago before this craziness started, and we'd been dating for a year before that. She's an excellent cook and really funny, so life with her has been great, but since this incident, she's been snappy at me and lost some of her perkiness and good humor. She always liked to mix fancy drinks in big mason jars to drink around the house. Now, mind you, I've actually been a bartender before. Her drinks are not fancy. They're not even drinks. She usually just squeezes a lemon and puts some ice on her water, or she makes green tea and cools it in the fridge with mint or whatever. And the jars usually come from some grocery, or she saves jars from bulk peanut butter, bean jars, whatever, has a big glass jar. She's going to end up saving it to drink from it. Before moving in, I'd ask about the jars because I thought it was really strange. I mean, she owns normal glasses. Her justification was that the jars are bigger and therefore she doesn't forget to drink water throughout the day. At the time, I kind of assumed this was some weight loss thing she didn't want to actually tell me because she was embarrassed as she's a little bit chubby, so I let it go. But now that I've moved in, the jars are annoying me more and more. She doesn't keep every one of them, but she has like 10 in their own shelf, and it seems like such a stupid waste of space in our small kitchen. Besides, we already have glasses. She doesn't have to drink from a jar. So earlier this week, I was tidying up the kitchen while she slept in, and I just threw them out. I think the kitchen looks much better now. We have more storage for pots, and she can still prepare her fancy drinks in normal glasses. She was pissed, though. I've never seen her so mad. Her main point was that the jars never bothered anyone and it's none of my business, but now I live here too, so I think it is. During the fight, and this is where I may be the I mentioned that it's stupid to want special recipients to just drink flavored water. It's not like it's a cocktail and she's only doing it to lose weight anyway. She went really quiet at that and walked away from me. I gave her time to get over it, but it's been a few days and she's still moping around, and I noticed she doesn't seem excited about her fancy drinks anymore. That's making me kind of feel bad, but I still think I was in the right to throw out her jars as they were just garbage. Should I just bite the bullet and apologize? AITA? Story 3. The husband who missed his child's birth for a sports game, then lied to his parents with a big dramatic sob story about how he'd actually been there and it was so hard and stressful. Then he got mad when his wife called him out on lying. You know you're an a-hole when your own mother tears you a new one for what you did. I gave birth to my son 10 weeks ago. I went through an exhausting period while I was nearing my due date. I was experiencing discomfort and wanted my husband by my side when I went into labor, but he'd go out every night to hang out at his friend's place and watch football games. I suggested that he could play and watch games at home just in case, but he was having none of it and said he had to attend game night at his brother and friend's place along with his buddies. He said they had certain, how can I describe it, quote-unquote rituals when watching a game, and he can't enjoy doing it at home or anywhere else. The night of our son's birth, my water broke while my husband was at his buddy's place watching a game. I called him and told him to get home and take me to the hospital. He said he was coming, but he didn't. I ended up calling my sister, she lives nearby, and she took me to the hospital. My husband showed up 2 hours later after he kept calling, asking if I was still in labor and that he was almost done watching the game. He was able to make it on time for our son's birth, but I was furious with him, mad and disappointed. He apologized profusely and has been working on regaining my trust and respect for him after what he'd done. He's otherwise very supportive and involved in our son's care. Last night, I was at my in-laws' house for dinner and we were talking about my son's birthday. My husband suddenly started recalling what happened that night and basically started lying about driving me to the hospital, waiting and feeling stressed out and standing on his feet for so long without food or even water. I was confused and I said, no, none of this was true, none of this happened. In fact, he was watching a game when I went into labor and I wanted him to drive me to the hospital, but he didn't show up till 2 hours later. My mother-in-law, who takes no crap from anybody and whom everyone fears, lost it on him, yelling, asking him if that was true, and he just kept quiet. She started berating him left and right, telling him to sit down and shut up when he stood up to argue, then told him to stand up when he was sitting arguing. Everyone was laughing at how she basically treated him as if he was a boy in trouble. She kept saying, shame, shame, shame on you. This is not how I raise my children to treat their wives. Jordan, you are a disgrace. And I'm disappointed because of what I heard about you. He literally swallowed every bit of his mother's berating and didn't say anything till we got home, where he went nuts saying I made him look neglectful, a bad husband and father, by telling the family about where he was and said I shouldn't have said anything, but I argued it wasn't okay for him to lie and play hero in front of his parents. He said I just caused a rift between him and family and asked if I was happy now. AITA, should I have not said anything? To say that he's done similar things in the past since he's a major enthusiast of football and hockey, but I didn't expect it to get to that. Also, this is not our first baby together. We have a 4-year-old son. Story 4. The guy who treated his friend's wife like Meals on Wheels and the husband didn't care. It's not that bad, but I always remember it. So this woman, OP, is a nurse who often worked 12-hour days, but still always cooked amazing meals for her husband. One day, her husband's best friend's wife passes away. When she passed, OP's husband suggested that OP should cook some nice meals for the new widower, as he is in grief and he doesn't know how to cook. Fine. But then this keeps going on, week after week. OP gets home from work and is forced to cook all this food and bring it over to the new widower. But this guy has requests and would criticize the food to be more like how his late wife made it. Then one day, he has people over for dinner, not OP and her husband, and requests that she make him enough dinner for his whole dinner party. He requests this while she's at work and she didn't see the text. When she comes home, her husband is mad at her. She finally stands up for herself and says she won't be cooking for the friend anymore, and her husband has the audacity to think she is being selfish. Sure, maybe 1 or 2 weeks of helping out and bringing the guy a few meals, but this guy expected nightly meals for weeks. Like at some point, you can't learn to cook on your own. I also feel bad for both wives that their husbands won't even attempt to help cook anything. That makes me think of a somewhat similar one where a guy was asking his wife to make him meals for work, and the wife later learned that he was selling the meals to his coworkers so that he could go buy some fast food he liked better. Then got mad when the wife told him she would stop cooking those meals. I do have a lot more stories cooking too, so please do hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on them. It really helps me out. Story 5. I wouldn't say the biggest a-hole in the grand scheme of AITA, but I do feel like Iranian yogurt guy deserves a shout out as one of the most memorable a-holes. I'm 29, female, my boyfriend is 30, we've been living together for 2 years in a little studio in a very expensive big US city. My boyfriend grew up rurally with lots of space, enough to collect all kinds of things. He collected action figures and video games and all the normal kid stuff when he was young, but as he grew older, he became interested in more unusual things. As a teen, he had 8 guinea pigs of different types from different breeders. Since Tide Pods were released 7 years ago, he's saved one of every kind of Tide Pod. He's got a big box of an international variety of electric insulators, those little ceramic hats that power lines wrap around on power poles. He's not a hoarder, he's usually neat, just used to having lots of space for his bizarro collections. At his parents' ranch, he has 2 big rooms full of containers of weird and impressive things. He recently became interested in yogurt. He's always hated dairy products until about a year ago. He not just started drinking milk and sharing ice cream with me, but he's found a love for yogurts. So he now collects them, of course. The problem is that they're perishable. So until earlier today, our little 550 square foot studio contained about 2,100 cups of yogurt. It comes in tons of varieties, different types, flavors, textures, containers made by different companies in different countries. This is like illegal substances to my boyfriend, so he tried to pretty much save a sample of everything he could find. He filled our fridge, bought a new fridge, and then another tiny bedside fridge. He said he didn't want to walk to the fridge at night, but it was obviously a ruse to get more yogurt space. Now these fridges are all filled up with his yogurts, and if you keep them for long, they start to smell bad. Sometimes the packaging breaks, so our apartment was smelling like spoiled milk for the last 2 weeks. And my boyfriend's attitude was, oh, it's fine, and I'll just deal with it for a little bit longer. Until I pulled the plug and threw it all out this morning. I was looking at my groceries, which I had to put beside the fridge because there was no space and everything smelled like death, and then I kind of snapped and just threw it all away. My boyfriend is understandably upset. We've been arguing about whether I crossed a line by throwing away his stuff, and he's especially upset because he, of course, had rare yogurts that were hard to find. In particular, he had some Cuban and Iranian yogurts that you can't get in the US. But I know that we have trade sanctions against Iran and Cuba, so I don't know if it was even legal for him to have them. I asked where he got his Iranian yogurt, but he kept insisting the Iranian yogurt is not the issue here, and that the real issue was me throwing out his precious yogurts without his permission. So, am I the a-hole here? Do I need r/legal advice? I'm just so exasperated. Quote unquote, the Iranian yogurt is not the issue here cracked me up. I hope at some point in my life I find a way to seamlessly drop that into a conversation, right? Story 6. The one with the guy whose daughter was super depressed. He got her therapy and she made some improvements, but then asked if he'd be the if he canceled her therapy because she likes it and her grades hadn't yet improved. My daughter, 14, has had anxiety problems ever since she was little, but it was not severe. 3 months ago, my daughter changed drastically. She stopped eating, talking to us or her friends, and her marks dropped. We were really concerned, and her teachers strongly suggested we take her to therapy, which we did, and she was diagnosed with severe depression and social anxiety, which was expected. The therapy sessions looked like they helped her well. The first month, she already began making progress and started talking to us again and her friends, and is eating whatever her mother is cooking. We were really happy to see this, and every day she would get better and better. The thing is, her marks did not. They are still terrible, and she ended up barely passing the year. This is what infuriated me and made me cancel her therapy sessions. I know to some it might sound terrible, but paying $120 per session and seeing no progress in her marks makes me feel like I'm seriously wasting my money, now that she returned back to normal. Not only that, but since she really enjoys going to therapy, I think telling her that she needs to get higher marks to continue her therapy sessions will motivate her to study harder and thus score better marks. My wife disagrees with my logic, and we had a massive argument because of it, which ended up with her saying that she's going to pay from her money, which hurt me since I see my and her money as ours. My daughter's also really upset with me and was begging me to keep her therapy sessions, but I think I'm just gonna stick to this plan. AITA here? Story 7. The woman who said she controls how much water her son drinks. My son, 14, drinks a lot of water. If we don't regulate it, he will drink 3, 4, or 5 bottles of water a day. He just says he's really thirsty. The problem is tap water in our area is terrible, so he can't drink that, but buying so many water bottles is insanely expensive. We spend hundreds of dollars a month on just water. We took him to the doctor a couple of years ago to see if there was an issue. He's fine, he just drinks a lot of water. Me and my husband are kind of tired of this, so last week we sat our son down and made a new rule. He can have 2 water bottles a day, which is still enough to not be thirsty. To enforce this rule, every bottle he drinks past the limit is 1 day of grounding. We got some pushback at first, but it wasn't a problem until yesterday, where he drank 5 bottles of water in just 24 hours. We followed the rules and grounded him for 3 days. He was really mad and said it's totally unfair, but we reminded him those were the rules. I talked to my sister about this, and she said it was crazy. This for sure has to be a troll, right? YTA, let the kid drink water. Are you trying to end him? Maybe try a little water filter for the tap water or buy bigger bottles of water so it becomes, more economical. Story 8. The story about how he fired his daughter's friend for being too polite. I hired my daughter's best friend. She's a good kid and has a real interest in learning and working in my industry. My daughter's friend was unqualified, but I cleared it with the film's producers to have an assistant who was also a student. She is a hard worker and a fast learner and picked up her role well. She is going to have a successful career as a theater film technician. In spite of that hard work and quick learning, I had to fire her last night over her text messages to me. She is hired as a student, her inexperience, and therefore needs to ask questions is assumed. I expect text messages asking for more clear directions, instructions on assigned tasks, clarification of the equipment, etc. I told her at the beginning of December, you are here to learn, not to already know. No matter where I am, you text me questions you have and I will come to show you or reply with an explanation. All her messages have been appropriate questions for the tasks currently assigned. My hang-up has been how she begins her messages. I'll start with, Mr. Last name, sorry to bother you. I know you're busy. I don't want to be a bother. Sorry, I need help again, etc. I have repeatedly text back that she is not a bother, that I want her asking questions, that she does not need to be so formal, and so forth. No matter how many times I tell her to drop formalities, she just keeps using them in every message. I explained I am her supervisor on set and her questions are part of that role. So after 5 weeks now of her not following my repeated requests to believe in the validity of her right to ask questions yesterday afternoon, I switched it to an ultimatum. If your future messages open with any wording that implies you are an inconvenience, then I am going to assume you don't feel professionally ready to be working on a film and I will have to let you go. 3 hours later, she sends the final message with, sorry. I replied back that she needed to go back to the trailer to get her stuff and leave. She was no longer my assistant on this film. Now she's hurt. Her mom passive-aggressively dragged me on social media. My daughter texted letting me know how mad she is at me, and when I got home, had a sign on her bedroom door that said, don't knock, don't try to speak with me. So basically everyone is mad at me. Now the fired best friend will still be included in the credits, invited to the premiere as a crew member, and get a positive job reference on her ability to perform the assigned tasks. All she lost was these final 2 weeks of work. I have assured everyone that I will give her another chance on a future gig when I feel she is ready to ask questions without qualifiers. Listening to and adapting your work behavior to the preferences of your supervisor is a real-world priority, so I think I did her future career a favor teaching that lesson. Am I the a-hole? How dare someone be so courteous and so polite? I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you're also going to enjoy what's the worst adult tantrum you've ever seen. Story 4 was so crazy, it's nearly unbelievable. I'll see you in that video, and thank you for watching this one.